Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, sharks, romance, and probably the most disturbing book I've ever read. It's my weekly wrap-up. So, normal format for this Saturday video. I'll tell you what I have been reading in the last week. I'll tell you what I think I'm probably going to be reading in the week ahead. And I'll just let you know what's been on the channel and what's coming up so you don't miss anything. So, firstly, in terms of books I have read, so I've got a couple of Kindle ones to talk about before I get into the paper books. So the first one, and I mentioned this on the video last week, was The Summerside Lake Massacre by L.R.J. Allen. So I was reading that when I filmed last week's video. Finished it, a really enjoyable slasher with a decent mystery element, lots of different kind of parts to the plot that were juggled very well. I've done a review of it which will go up this coming Friday in my Small Press Fridays video, so I was going to put that up this week just gone, but instead I put up the BookTube birthday video because it was the day of my BookTube first anniversary. So that Small Press Fridays video will now be next Friday, and I will be talking about Summerside Lake Massacre, which I really enjoyed. It was very good. The other one I just read, and this was for Ultimo Moore, on my Kindle, was The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn, which is the second of the Bridgerton books. This was just a lot of fun. It's just a very skillfully written and enjoyable romance. Very funny at times, quite gripping. There was a couple of kind of heart-in-your-mouth moments of peril, and, you know, sweetly romantic as well. Just a really thoroughly enjoyable book. It differs a bit in some ways from the TV show Bridgerton. So this is the book that covers the events of the second season of Bridgerton. So there are some differences, but broadly speaking, it's the same. And I really, really enjoyed it, and I think I'm definitely going to continue reading that series. So this was for week 3 of Ultimo Moore, which was Haves or Have-Nots. So I read this as a Haves book, because obviously the people in it are very privileged. But I did read, I wasn't planning to read a Have-Nots book, but I did read a Have-Nots book as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, it was really, really entertaining, and Ultimo Moore is proving to be a very entertaining reading event. So thank you very much to the Bookish Branch for organising it, along with all the people who are hosting it. So physical books then. So let's do the other one I read for Ultimo Moore first then. So that was Appellation Abduction by Debbie Herbert, which is in this Mills and Boon double. So this is the sequel to, or the second book in the series, the first book being Appalachian Prey, which I read last month. Oh no, actually I read it earlier this month. I read it at the beginning. It was my week 1 book for Ultimo Moore. And I enjoyed it so much I thought I'd read the rest of the series. So Appellation Abduction was great fun. So it's about a woman who's an undercover detective who goes to Lavender Hill, which is the same setting as the Lavender Mountain, not Lavender Hill. Lavender Hill is something completely different. Goes to Lavender Mountain, which is the setting of the first book, and teams up with the local sheriff, who is he's the brother of the actually he's not the sheriff, he's a deputy. So she teams up with a local deputy who's the brother of the heroine from the first book. So there's kind of there's a connection there, but it doesn't really continue the story as such. And the reason she's there is because she thinks all these teenage girls have been abducted. And it's about them, teaming up, investigating that crime, and literally falling in love. So again, it was just a really enjoyable romance, but a really good, decent crime thriller as well. So, it's not like desperately original or anything like that, but the kind of investigation elements are fun. There's a bit of action, it's quite exciting at times. So again, like the first book in the series, I really, really enjoyed it. And I've got the third one, which is Appellation something else, I can't remember. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that as well. So that was good. And at some point I will read the other. I bought this double for Appellation Abduction, but there's this other book in there, Kansas City Cop, which sounds quite fun as well. So I'm definitely enjoying these Mills and Bloom / Harlequin kind of romantic suspense books. So yeah, that was fun. Moving on then, so I read Jaws 2 by Hank Searls, so completely different. But a book of two halves in terms of part of it I really, really thought was very good, and another part of it I thought completely failed. So it's a novelisation of the movie Jaws 2, but it's based on, I believe, a version of the script which is different from the version that was actually filmed. And obviously, quite often with novelisations, they are written, while the film is in production, because the publishers, the writer needs to finish the book and the publishers want to get it out on the shelf to coincide with the release of the film, which can mean that details change. So quite often novelisations have some different details to the films. And I think in this case it's quite different from the film. Now, having said that, I haven't watched the film for years, like probably at least 20 years. And so I can't remember what happens in it at all. So reading the book was quite an interesting experience in that it did just feel like a sequel to Jaws as a novel, rather than my memory of it being coloured by my memory of the film. So what it does really well is it feels like a really pretty good sequel to Jaws, and it's actually quite well written. So it's set in Amity again, and centres around Chief Brody. But there's a lot of stuff in here about like the town coming to terms with what happened in Jaws, which they call, what do they call it? They call it like the event or the disaster or something like that. They never talk about the shark, by name. They just refer to it as this terrible thing that's happened in the town's past, and also the effect on the Brody family, and in particular the older son, who was kind of scarred by the events of the first book, and Brody and his wife, who are sort of hyper protective as a result of what happened in the movie in the first book. So that part of it was really well done, and it's got a great sense of place. You feel like you get to know the town. The mayor's in it again, and there's all sorts of kind of funny goings on and kind of political stuff. So there's someone who's trying to open up a casino in the town. So there's loads of stuff about that, and there's the mafia get involved, and so as a small town, kind of slight thriller set in a small town, it worked really well. Where it completely falls down is as a book about a shark killing people, because the shark is in it quite a lot, and there's lots of scenes that are kind of about the shark and the shark swimming around the ocean and stuff like that. And this scene where you've got the shark chasing someone who's on water skis is in the book, and is a really good, really gripping, exciting scene. But apart from that, there's very little shark action. So it's an enjoyable small town thriller. But as a book about killer sharks, it completely fails to deliver, because there's hardly any shark death, or people getting chomped. So it felt like a missed opportunity. I think if someone did if the author had put more shark scenes in it, it would have been a lot more fun. As it was still enjoyable. I'm kind of reminded of years ago I saw a fan edit of Jaws, which is basically the movie Jaws, but they've taken extra like gore scenes from Italian sharksploitation movies that came out after Jaws to cash in on the success of Jaws, and inserted those into the film. So it's like Jaws, but with more scenes of sharks eating people and more gore. And as a result, it's really entertaining. So that's what this book needed. It needed someone to go through it and add more killings. So yeah, it was good, but not quite as good as I was expecting it to be. So something completely different next. So I read a classic. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to do this. So I read this for Shorty September. So this is my beach read for Shorty September for. I don't know, was it Beach Shorts Week? I can never remember the names of the prompts. Anyway, for a book, so for the prompt, which I think was it wasn't Ripped Shorts, was it Short Shorts, I think, was a book I think I'm going to regret reading. So that was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. So I tried to read this years ago and completely failed. And I did talk about it in my Sunday Bollocks video last week, actually. So I DNF'd it before. This time around, I really got on with it. I thought it was excellent. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was very readable and really interesting. So it's about, this family in particular in the South, and one of the members of the family has died, and it's about them coming to terms with that, the funeral and things like that. And it's told. What's interesting and what it is famous for is that it's told from the perspective of lots of different characters, and that can be a bit confusing at times. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was quite moving, and you really felt immersed in the lives of these people and in the situation they found themselves in. So much like I'm reflecting back on another classic I've read this month, Moby Dick, and the fact that in the same way I felt like that, really immersed in the lives of the characters. So I definitely felt that with this. I thought it was really good, and I can see why it's considered a classic. Now, having said all of that, I read it in the way that I read books, which is I just read it. I didn't think about it, I just read it. And I suspect that there's a lot of depth there that eluded me because of that. So I think at some point, I'm certainly not promising to do this anytime soon, at some point I think it merits a reread, because I think there is subtlety and depth there which I missed. But as I say, as a book and on the read, I did a bit this week. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, I'll save the most disturbing book for last. So let's go on to... so this was another one for Shorty September, and it was a book with a beautiful cover. So I read the first of the Elric of Melnibone books by Michael Moorcock, which is Elric of Melnibone. So I've read this. I read it in February of this year for February Fantasy Stories, and I'd read it years ago as a teenager as well. So it's very unusual for me to reread a book so soon after reading it. But I loved it. I think every time I read this book, it gets better. So it's only like 180 pages or something like that. This volume has, I think, 4 of the Elric novels in it. And if you don't know them, they are kind of sword and sorcery type books, but with a kind of slightly gothic twist. So about this Prince Elric, who is kind of cursed, and it is in some ways weak, but in other ways really strong. And it's got this wonderful kind of dreamlike feel to it as he goes on this quest. He's questing to find these 2 swords, and there's all this kind of intrigue and stuff like that about his cousin, who's kind of his adversary. It's just wonderful stuff, so rich, beautifully written, really gripping. I really liked it, and I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of the books in the series. So I've read a few of them as a teenager, and I read the second one again quite recently. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing to read this series. What I also read in this volume was the foreword, which was written by Neil Gaiman, which was fantastic. Which kind of takes, rather than being a traditional foreword, it's basically like a short story about this schoolboy who is really, really into Michael Moorcock. And it was fantastic. I really loved it, and I reflected on the fact that I'm of a similar age to Neil Gaiman. I think he's probably a little bit older than me. But it really rung true with me, his kind of depiction of school life, and particularly school life if you're a bit of a nerd who likes fantasy, felt incredibly realistic to me. So it was wonderful. I definitely, if you've got this volume and you haven't read the foreword, I definitely recommend it. And if you're a Neil Gaiman fan, I would imagine that's the only way to get this piece of writing by him. But I thought it was really phenomenal. And then I read this, Notice by Heather Lewis. So this is a book that I first heard about when Juan from Plagued by Visions did his Most Disturbing Books collaboration video, which I was very grateful to be asked to be part of. And this was the pick in that of Blackacre Doe. And subsequently, Alex the Bookubus has read it as well and commented about it on her channel. And I'd meant to buy it, or I'd put it on my list of books to buy, shall we say, after seeing Blackacre Doe mention it. And then Alex reminded me of it, and I bought a copy. And it is, I genuinely think it's the most disturbing book I've ever read. So I am going to do a full review of it, which will hopefully go up this week on Thursday. But essentially it's about a young woman who's fallen into a life of prostitution, who gets picked up by this guy and taken home to basically stay with him and his wife and engage in sexual acts with them. And it's just so horrifically bleak, and some of the detail in it is just horrifyingly horrible and incredibly disturbing. and it's incredibly sad and incredibly moving and a really fantastic book. As I say, I will do a separate review on it, which will go up on Thursday and talk a bit more about it. But boy, was it something. So that's what I have read. I'm currently reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is excellent so far. So I'm about a third of the way through it. I started it this morning. It's about this sort of kind of strange school called Hailsham, where there's obviously something a bit weird going on, but it's not quite clear yet what it is. And about the various kids at that school. It's written from the perspective of one of them, who is now an adult, and she's kind of looking back on her school years. So yeah, very intriguing so far, very interesting, incredibly readable. So for a book which is considered to be literature, it's incredibly readable, and I'm really enjoying it. So hoping to finish that this weekend, and I will talk about that next week in my wrap up. And then other things I'm going to read this week. So I'm kind of a bit behind. I've fallen into the trap again of measuring my reading and setting myself page targets, which I've decided is a bad thing. I've talked about this on the channel before. I used to do it. I stopped doing it. I've started doing it again, and I've decided it's not a good thing to be doing, and it's forcing my reading in ways that I don't like. So I'm not going to do that anymore, but I am slightly behind where I'd hoped to be in terms of my reading for this month. So one of the books I was planning to read this month, I've crossed off the list and bumped back to next month. But in terms of what I'm going to be reading in the week ahead, so for Ultima More, I'm going to be reading, where is it? Force of Nature by Christina Cook, which is all the Harlequin NASCAR romances. So this week is to read either something self-published or traditionally published. So I'm going the traditionally published route and reading some Harlequin. And then I'm also intending to read The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, which I have read before, but like 30 plus years ago. So I've got it in this Library of America edition, so I'll be reading that. And then also for Kelly Hooked on Books is From Hell Book Club, Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon, which is a book I've been meaning to read for years and years and years. I used to have a paperback copy of it, which I lost or sold years ago. I've now got it on my Kindle, so I'm going to be reading that as well. I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm hoping to get those 3 books in by the end of the month. So that's the bookish stuff out of the way. In terms of the channel then, so in the last week I've done, as I mentioned already, I did the BookTube birthday tag, because yesterday, Friday, was the first anniversary of my channel. I also did a video comparing The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler and The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, both of which I really enjoyed. I did an Ask Criminoli video on Wednesday. I did the Rules for Reading tag on Tuesday, and I did a video about DNFing for my Sunday Bollocks video in the week just gone. And I've also started doing shorts as well. So if you haven't seen them, I've started doing shorts. Venus, my cat, appears in many of them, which people seem to be quite enjoying. So I'm going to continue trying to do those as well. And then in the week ahead, I think I know what I'm going to do for Sunday Bollocks tomorrow. And it's something I'm feeling a bit nervous about. It's a difficult topic. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to do it or not. I might do something else instead, but wait and see. As I said, I'm going to do a review of Notice. I filmed a shelf tour of my new shelves, so that'll be going up on Monday. And I've done the Cult of Celebrity tag, so that will go up on Tuesday. And what else have I done? Oh, my Small Press Friday video, as I've said, with the review of Summerside Lake Massacre, will go up on Friday. So I've got a few things already filmed for next week. I may do an Ask Criminoli on Wednesday. I may do something else. There's something else I'm wanting to do, but I need to get my arse in gear and do it. So we shall see if I manage to do that or not. But that's kind of a flavour of what's coming in the week ahead. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Do let me know what you've been reading this week. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you to everybody who commented on my my BookTube birthday video with their congratulations for my first anniversary of BookTubeness. if that's a word. I don't think it is. So yeah, thank you if you commented on that. I really do appreciate everyone's views, everyone's comments, everyone's interactions. I'm loving this booktube experience. And hope to continue it for many years to come. So yeah, thank you very much. And as always, thank you for watching this. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.